Launching a multinational campaign 4 years ahead of a World Cup requires a staggering amount of physical momentum. Budweiser poured $75 million into their FIFA partnership. They staged trucks, coolers, and pouring infrastructure around every stadium venue in Qatar. They also locked in years of creative development. Campaigns anchored by global superstars like Lionel Messi were contracted, shot, and shipped well in advance. By the time the tournament approached, the campaign had hardened into a deeply expensive physical machine operating on a global scale. Then, exactly 48 hours before kickoff, the host nation's royal family closed the tap. The new rule was absolute. No alcohol would be sold inside the stadium perimeter. The only branding allowed to survive the cut was the zero alcohol variant, Bud Zero. The brand's immediate public reaction was a single tweet reading, "Well, this is awkward," which they promptly deleted. They had constructed a $75 million infrastructure that completely relied on an external permission they had absolutely no authority to enforce. In any complex structure, there's a load-bearing variable, a core assumption holding up the project. For Budweiser, that pillar was the assumption they could pour beer. Revoke a permission you don't control, and the execution above it doesn't matter. The whole thing collapses. This creates the paralysis of locked tooling. With warehouses fully stocked and contracts signed, there is no cheap way to redesign your intent. Building your most visible, expensive asset on territory controlled by someone else is a catastrophic design flaw. Within that narrow 48-hour window, Budweiser and their agency executed an emergency counter-strategy. They pledged all their marooned inventory to whichever country won the tournament. They shifted instantly from a highly controlled stadium pour to a decentralized, multi-city distribution model on an entirely different continent. Argentina took the trophy, and the brand delivered millions of cans to fuel 30 straight days of national celebration. This maneuver turned a terminal logistics failure into a global marketing victory, reaching audiences through the victory celebration rather than the stadium seats. The popular marketing takeaway here is that improvisational genius saved the day, but that ignores the actual mechanics of the rescue. The pivot only worked because the underlying product, millions of individual cans of beer, was highly modular. It could physically be picked up and pointed somewhere else. If their activation had been a fixed physical structure poured in concrete, no amount of clever thinking could have repointed it in time. Quick thinking is useless if the core product is too rigid to adapt to new intent. This highlights the discipline of design intelligence. It requires identifying which permissions you don't actually own before any tooling is locked. This timeline models worst-case scenarios during the flexible concept phase, plotting fallbacks for central assumptions. Fixing a flaw on a whiteboard costs nothing. Fixing it after shipping containers are loaded costs tens of millions. The true edge in design is finding your fatal flaw on the concept board, long before the 48-hour countdown begins.